Good morning to everyone.
Sorry.
Good morning, everyone. So I am Deseria Galloway, and I am the CEO of Wellspring Second Chance Center, which basically came out of a dream, right? At the time of getting the mission dropped into my spirit, I was still an investigator for child protection for Hennepin, and I was housed in the Brooklyn Center Police Department. When I thought about I need to do more. I was touching so many lives that people were coming into systems. I had a problem with that, to be honest with you. As an investigator for child protection, I was observing people coming from other states, Milwaukee, Illinois, Indiana. I mean, it didn't matter. And within 6 months of them being here or less, they were in systems. It was either in the juvenile justice system or the criminal justice system, right? And it just tugged on my heart because I'm thinking, what the heck? What are they doing differently than what they were doing in the state they came from, right? That once you get into Minnesota, you're finding yourself in systems. Easy to get in, hard to get out, right? And so it was at that point, my husband and I even had friends, cohorts, family that were finding themselves in this situation. And the conversation was very intense, so much so that when we went to sleep, I woke up that same night about 2:00 in the morning, and I wrote the first 6 pages of the agency that God just dropped in my spirit, right? I just wanted to do more. I wanted to reduce the bureaucracy and the barriers of services, increase access. And so that's how Wellspring came to be. My cousin, who's attorney Jerry Blackwell, helped me he called a couple of friends and said, hey, help her put this thing together. It's a great model. And here we are. And so what does Wellspring do? Or what do you find in a well? Love, hope, understanding, grace, empathy, forgiveness, all of which I've had my own journey in. And so I've been working in this field for over 40 years now. Straight out of undergrad, I went into the field of working at a halfway house, and it just grew from there. Right? I have a real passion to working with families, and especially the youth of those families. They are special to me, and I think most rewards come through youth. So a lot of my programs target youth. That is what I do. We provide programming for youth. We have quite a few programs at the agency, but the longest standing one is the Choice Program. The Choice Program is about 11 years old now, and it basically encompasses conflict resolution, character development, literacy through theater, keeping it real, identity formation 1 and 2, anger management. And once we did that program, and the kids would graduate from that program, one day, one of the youth came to me and said, Mrs. Galloway, what do I do now? Without getting too emotional, to this day, it is really etched in my spirit what that young man said to me. What do I do now? I'm graduating your program. What do I do now? He said, I'm going to feel lost. So out of that came the idea of getting a work program for the youth. And I had a couple millionaires, one from Detroit and 2 from the state of Minnesota, that went before me to Airmark, and we got a contract with Airmark. And that contract we've had for 6 years, right? And so to watch the kids grow from coming into one door and then leaving out the other, it's just amazing. I got kids walking up to me that are now grown and like, Mrs. Galloway, I'm doing so well. That's why I do the work that I do, right? The Choice Program has been good to us. And we've now put the Choice Program, we've integrated the Choice Program into a larger program called the Grace Project. And the Grace Project is county funded. And those children or those youth range from 14 all the way up to 21, 24. And those kids are already in the system. Many are already in the system. They are, some have been to prison, youth prison, some have not. Some have just been to JDC, some are just on home house arrest. But these children come in with a conglomerate, multi-layered issues, right? And our agency, because I have a mental health background, we made it a part of the program that every child that comes through the Grace Project has to be in counseling. Their parents have to participate once a month, but the kids need to be in it once a week. So that is a requirement to come through the Grace Project. Grace Project also entails youth having to participate in the choice program. They have to participate in the work program. And if they can't, if they're not old enough to do that, we have some 14, 15-year-olds that are not old enough, then we find jobs for them, whether that is just working at our office, you know, and where we pay them a stipend, right? But we are trying to teach what real life looks like, right? Working a job, paying taxes, you know, managing your money, right? So we do teach financial literacy as a part of the Grace Project as well. The kids get 6 weeks of financial literacy or financial competency, right? And so the Grace Project also offers mentorship where they get the mentors that they're mentoring with are people that are in construction, electric engineering, in mechanics, right? And they're volunteering their time in this program. It's called Mentors Plus. So that Mentors Plus program meets every Saturday for 3 hours. And those youth receive one-on-one, hands-on mentorship, right? And a couple of the kids have now gotten jobs with those persons that have come and did the mentorships with us, right? Again, this is where the rewards come in, right? This is my passion, right? I'm committed to it, you know? And so they do counseling, they do the choice program, they do the work program, they do the mentorship program, right? And then they do the chess program. The chess program meets on Friday night. So it's 5 to 6 days of engagement every week, keeping them off the street, right? They go to school during the day, they come to programming in the evening. And on Saturdays, it's the midday from 11 to 2. So we're trying to show them how to keep themselves busy and positively engaged. The chess program, if you make the wrong move, it could cost you your freedom, it could cost you your life. So we teach them problem solving, discipline, focus, right? Through the game of, or through the art of chess. And so that is the Grace Project. I'm really happy about the Grace Project. It's a lot of work, but it's also very rewarding to watch the kids grow. What else do we do at Wellspring? We have a domestic violence program for the offender as well as the survivor. There's a survivors support group that meets every Monday at 2 o'clock. And then on Tuesdays, they do trauma group. It is, if you come through domestic violence program, if you're receiving wraparound services, they have to do the MRT trauma group and they have to do the support group. We also, anybody that comes through the doors of Wellspring, you come in for one thing, you have access to everything. So we have employment counselors, right? We have housing counselors. We have SNAP counselors, right? Get there, you have food disparity, we can help you with that. You can do the application right there, right? So we do provide wraparound services, right? And so you come in the door, you come in the door with one complaint and you leave out a basket full of resources, etc. It's the best way I can describe that, right? But for the survivors, we have a shelter, a 10-day shelter on site. And then we have a transitional apartment on site as well that's connected to our office. And so it's forever being used, as you probably can imagine. Actually, just before I got on with Katie, I had just hung up with a young lady who's in need of shelter. And so, unfortunately, being a victim of battering 38, 39 years ago myself, that I escaped from that. This is one of the precious things that I believe in. When I donate to charities, it goes to a battered women's shelter, right? Tubman Alliance, Sojourner Truth, those, I'm really, so when the programs that I'm doing, this is about my passion, right? And so the offender program meets on Mondays as well. Often offenders also do not just the offender program, which is 36 weeks long, but they do anger management on Tuesday evenings, right? Because we want them to understand fully why they are acting the way they are acting. We teach how how past learning plays out in our adult lives. What are we carrying over from our childhood? Those ACEs that we experience, right? Those adverse childhood experiences that we experience. How is that playing in today's life? I'll give you a story of one of the young men that was in one of my anger management sessions, a first-time gun offender, in fact, who successfully is doing incredibly well right now. I was presenting and I was on forgiveness, how important forgiveness is, right? Because anger, it is better to address and not suppress, right? And so this young man said, well, Mr. Galloway, I have a legitimate reason why I'm angry, why I did what I did. Okay. And, he's in there for the first time gun offender, but my concern was, sir, so the issue was this: someone sexually abused his daughter. He said, Mrs. Galloway, I'm angry. And I said, okay. And he said, I want to find him. I said, but why? Why do you want to find him? Why can't you leave that up to the courts? No, Mrs. Galloway, you don't understand. I said, I probably understand it better than you think I understand it. And so he was telling me why he should go after the person that did this to his daughter. And it was so, I heard him and I felt what he was saying, but I felt the urgency to share with him the sacred bond between a father and a daughter. When you go after the guy that did this to your daughter and you kill him, or you just, hurt him and he's permanently, disfigured, or whatever the case may be, paralyzed, you lose your freedom. The daughter loses a father. How do you parent from prison? You can't, right? You say you love her, then demonstrate the love in a way that is going to be constructive. She's going to need you through the ages and stages of life, because it's going to come up every time in her ages and stages, right? And I said, she's going to need you, not in prison. She's going to need you, Dad, when this thing hits her in the face, when she starts dating, or when she's getting ready to get married and she says, I can't do it because she's never addressed the sexual abuse. When I was talking to him, the tears was coming down my face, because I said, I know what you're talking about. I've been there, and I know how important my father was to me. I also gave him the author in the book, Sacred Bond, so he could understand the necessity of his daughter's going to be needing him to be around. Needless to say, again, here's where the rewards come in. That young man came back to group the following Thursday and said, Mrs. Galloway, I want to tell you something. He said, I heard you. I heard you for real. He said, I'm going to leave it alone. He said, I also know that I got to forgive. He said, that one's going to take time. I said, it does. It does take time. But to hear you say that you're not going to go after him, that you're going to leave it up to the law, right? And you're going to work on your part of, getting in that therapy so you can work through that, and get your daughter in therapy so she can work through that. It's the healthiest, constructive way. And the love that your daughter knows that you can demonstrate to her how a man is supposed to treat a girl, how a man is supposed to treat a woman, right? You'll be able to show her that because you're going to be around. That's the kind of stuff that pushes me to do the work I do at Wellspring Second Chance Center, right? It is not about the money. It will probably never be about the money, because what I do from the heart, right? It is purpose and passion marrying together. I think it was my purpose. I hate to say that I experienced some of the things I experienced, but what I did is I took that which I learned, and what I got out of the mess was a message, and I share that message with others, right? That's what we do at Wellspring Second Chance Center. So we do a lot, right? We work with the offenders, but we also work with survivors, right? We work with the children, but we also work with their parents, right? Because I think it's necessary. To fix a child, to send them back home to a dysfunctional family does not benefit anybody. The family unit is destroyed, the family unit is dysfunctional, that spreads and it falls out into the community, a community in which I love, right? And so my job is basically to create a safe world for you and me, right? And that's how I think I use that to continue the work, right? My husband says I'm married to the job. That's possible. That's possible, right? But I am about a person's mistake should not define them. That's a philosophy, and I stand by it as a belief system. And I do believe in a second chance. So when I created my agency, Wellspring Second Chance Center, it came from deep within, right? When I sat up then at 2 o'clock in the morning and typed the first 6 pages of the organization, that was real. What I wanted to see happen, the mission, the desire to heal our communities. Our communities are fragmented. Our communities are hurting. Our communities are asking for help, sometimes in the most dysfunctional way. But they need community-based programs such as Wellspring Second Chance, a non-judgmental, one that doesn't have bureaucracy, so much bureaucracy that they don't gain access to programming, right? I recently, a year ago, I was in another panel, and it talked about the need for community-based programming in the Black church and why they are critical to the healing and hope for the communities. It is critical. We're now in a public health crisis with gun violence. It is something that I've been always involved in and will continue to do that. Work with Urban Ventures from the ground up with a Pathways program around that, first time gun offender program. We made the article, made national news for what the work that we're doing, 78% success rate, right? That's huge. That's huge. Our staff we're doing great work. As John Lewis says, we're doing the good work, right? I use that. I stand on the shoulders of our ancestors like John Lewis, and various ones. I will continue to do the work in empowering our participants, our families, our youth, teaching them to be responsible decision makers, right? And then hopefully allowing them to trusting us to do right by them, right? What I tell people, and before I do programming, that I'm a woman of integrity and respect. I don't want no one to ever question that. I live that. They see that. When they encounter me on the street, they see that. When they're in my office, they're going to see the same person. I don't change, right? So I'm looking for a brighter future because of the work that we do there at Wellspring Second Chance. Done, Katie.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. We can open it up to questions if anyone has questions. I have some questions, but I'm gonna wait and
Okay.
people have questions.
Okay. No questions. Wow. Okay. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Did a great job. I'm just so impressed that you seem to be just like you've noticed that there are social determinants of health that need to be addressed.
Yes.
And you are addressing them in a comprehensive, holistic way that includes their families. It includes all of the systems that we're enmeshed in. That's amazing to me. I'm wondering what do you see in terms of the opioid crisis and other substances? How is that impacting the people that you serve and the community?
It is indeed impacting us. That's a great question, Katie. In the Grace Project, we had a young man who was using, and he had been in the program maybe a month. And he was changing before our eyes. And I'm like, is he using? I mean, it came to my attention that maybe he might be using. Okay. And so then, he flipped out one day. And I was like, okay, so there's something going on. Now, keep in mind, the kids are in our program 5 days a week, and then they do the counseling. So they're at 6 days. And so one day we were at Mentors Plus, which is the place where the kids got one-on-one with the construction workers, the electrical engineering, all those persons. And he shared with one of the volunteers that he had been up all night using drugs and drinking. The person came back and told me, they said, "Are you aware?" He just disclosed. And it was kind of funny because he felt comfortable saying it. And I think that was his way of asking for help. So I said, okay. So the next time he came to class, the classroom instructions, which I think was a Wednesday, we must have said something about drug use, and the kids, he included, said, "Well, Mrs. Galloway, it is, we use every once in a while. It's no big deal. Marijuana is no big deal." Okay. So, we had this little conversation. It was the very next day. The young man went to school. The school calls me in crisis. "Mrs. Galloway, this is," and she named the child, same kid. He's flipping out. I said, "Well, what do you guys, what happened?" "Well, obviously the person he was using with overdosed and died." He took it personal. So it was 2 men, him, and he was 16, and 2 adult women. So he's hanging with adults while he was using, and the adult male died. Fentanyl. So they were mixing it in with the marijuana. He was flipping out, and he told them, "Call Mrs. Galloway, call," as he was demanding that they call us, and said he wasn't going to make it to programming. I'm like, I said, so I said, "Where do you not have a social worker?" This was a school. "We don't have a social worker right now. We have an interim, and she's not here today." I'm like, oh, okay. So I took the time and I walked them through what they needed to do. I said, "You cannot release him to get on no bus. He's not in a position to get on no bus." I would encourage you to call his mother. I would also, if mother is not able to come, then I would probably take him to the nearest hospital, because he's probably having a psych break, right? But call his mother and let her know this is what's going on. I said it would be remiss of you to allow him to walk away from there with no adult supervision, right? He lost it. He flipped completely out. So why did I tell you that story? Because our kids are dealing with this on a regular basis. They're getting introduced to it by adults, and sometimes by cohorts, other kids. And then the same young man, I told his probation officer, he needs a Rule 25 assessment, Y'all need to do a rule. You also need to do a UA on him and get a hold of whatever he's using, because it's more than marijuana, but marijuana is still illegal for a minor, right? And so I said, and he was like, oh, I mean, he was very, I said, no. I said, the young man is now a part of a death investigation. As a former investigator, I'm trying to detail this to the PO. He's now part of a death investigation, right? You need to get him the help he needs. We don't want him going into my bathroom, overdosing in my bathroom here on site, right? That was a big concern to me. We have other kids. I don't want him passing drugs to anybody else, right? And so they did, you know, and I said he needs to be in treatment. Maybe he needs to go to treatment first and then come back, right? Then he brought drugs he did bring drugs a week later. I had to discharge him. I can't take the risk, right? He can come back after he gets the help he needs, right? But you can't be up in here. You're already using, now you want to bring drugs in your backpack. We have security on in our facility. And that came about when the kids started flipping out. I said, okay, need for security, right? And so there we are. But I let him know, and we did give him Narcan. The day when we learned that the overdose happened, the next time he came to class, we gave him 2 things of Narcan. He said, what is this? I said, I need to make sure you're okay. If you think you are someone else that you are using with, hanging with, is overdosing, this is what you do. And we gave it and we showed him. He said, well, thank you, Mrs. Galloway. Again, this is without judgment, right? He knows I care for him. He knows I care about him, right? So that's kind of, yes, the drug, opioids and all this, it is starting to impact our kids. And parents don't even know it, see? So we did alert the mother. Your son is using. Then I come to find out he had been home for 2 weeks. We didn't know that. The PO should have known that.
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, you've been working. You've worked with some of the two oldest organizations in African American organizations around who work with chemical health in Minnesota, African American Family Services and Turning Point. And you know, through your work, working through the crack epidemic, and now dealing with the opioid epidemics, what are some of the differences in engaging community and families in this epidemic, in the opioid epidemic?
Well, first of all, the detrimental is very detrimental. I mean, we have to inform the parents that you need to be nosy, right? You need to understand your son or your daughter is in the community. This is widely being used. And even though they're not even knowing what they're using it, right? And I do too work with Turning Point. They're one of our partners. And I actually asked Turning Point about the idea of doing teen treatment, right? Because sometimes reasons why kids use is because of what's going on at home. I had a young man tell me that. He said, Mrs. Galloway, I use so I can go home and then I know it's like a tunnel vision. I just go straight to my bedroom. That's very telling. He said the reason why he used, right? So now I think the difference is that you got grandparents that are using, you got your parents that are using, and sometimes introduced to their children. It is a family problem. It's no longer an individual problem, right? And if you say that you're going to treat the child and you don't consider the parent, you're messing up. And I do think that Turning Point has the capacity and the ability to provide youth treatment, and I think they need to go ahead and go do that. Our young people they're emulating what they're seeing from adults, unfortunately. Remember the 16-year-old boy. Those were adults he was with. He was the minor in the situation. right? And now fentanyl is coming, and then here's the other thing. Fentanyl, they're saying it's fentanyl, then it's something, there's another pill that resembles fentanyl. So now you have this muddied kind of water thing, and we don't know what we're dealing with. And it is important for us to be honest, transparent. That's one reason why I made it necessary, or I made it a priority to have the parents part of the counseling, so they can fully understand. If you're using and you think your kids don't know, that's a lie from the pits of hell. They do know you're using. And then you want to be mad at Johnny because he brought the drugs to the office, to the programming? So I think the crack epidemic was targeting, the crack part, cocaine was in the richer and affluent area, crack was in the minority area, in BIPOC areas, right? Fentanyl is hitting everybody across board. Don't matter what community you're from, right? So there lies the problem. Okay, we do need to be concerned that there's intergenerational concerns here. These parents are using, and then you think your child's not going to use? Come on, stop playing. So I am, because I do work with Turning Point, I used to work for Turning Point some 30 years ago, right? As an aftercare coordinator, so I have a very good understanding about drug abuse. But I also know that if we don't get this fentanyl thing under control, it's that we're going to have a community that's imploding, that's going to fall apart. And then we all are going to have to carry the ones that are healthy are going to have to carry these communities. And that's going to be a difficult feat. That's going to be difficult. It's going to be too hard to even manage at that point. We need to get on this now. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Also, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat box if you don't feel like speaking out. I have to keep our voice at a limit.
I wish I had a larger, I will say this, I wish I had a larger thing on substance abuse. We do Crutch No More, but I think it just needs to be more done. At every agency needs to have a portion of substance abuse as a part of their programming.
Well, I think you were right. Like, it's a limited programming for teens.
Yes.
And no one's into working with the team. Yes.
And it has to be culturally sensitive. It has to be culturally sensitive, as you already know how important culturally sensitive and relevant and responsive programming is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You telling me not to use fentanyl, and you ain't never, you're not from here. You don't know you don't know me as a person, a male of color has been through. How you gonna tell me not to use and not to numb the feelings that I'm dealing with? You know what I mean? Our men they're outward saying they are fearful. There are broken people walking around since the George Floyd thing. There are time bombs waiting to explode. You need to understand that. If you can't grasp that alone, is what I hear from young people. I serve a lot of young people. That's a problem. You have to get people that are conscious, that are trustworthy. You got to build a rapport with these kids. And I think that's what makes our agency really good, because we do that. But the fact of the matter is, you have to have a culturally responsive agencies doing some of this work. If you don't, we're going to lose the battle. So. What is the process of referring? Okay, I just saw the question. What's the process of referring to specific criteria for eligible? Okay, for the GRACE project is for anybody that's on probation. So the GRACE project is to keep the kids from going to prison. It's a diversionary program. It keeps them from going to prison. So we got kids that were recommended to go into residential care. There was kids that were referred to prison, and the PO said, well, let's give them one more chance with Wellspring and go through the Grace Project. If they successfully complete, then we won't have them sentenced. The judge won't have to sentence them to prison. Now we had one kid that came from Red Wing, right? So that came backwards, and he's in our program, but he is doing incredibly well. Right? But most of them are at JDC right now, just sitting and waiting. Some of them are at home on house arrest. So in order for them to come through the Grace Project, you must be already in probation. Is it a reactive system? You already know the answer to that. That's reactive. That's not proactive, that's reactive. And that's a problem that we have in our systems. Right? I think we need to start earlier. We need to have programming in the middle schools, right? When you see the child start having issues at school, somebody should be doing an assessment to figure out. But that young man or that young girl is going to see somebody down the road when they're 15, 16 years old. Okay. So so the Grace Project is our largest project, of course, because it's 6 days a week. So any probation officer can refer. Now, say for instance, a child is getting ready to go to court and they're probably going to be assigned a probation officer, they would still qualify, right? And then for anger management, we teach anger management across the Twin Cities. We do it for St. Cloud School District. We do it for Coon Rapids High School. We do it for Shiloh, which is the community one, which now is done online ever since COVID. We do anger management for Urban Ventures, and we do anger management for Turning Point, right? And they're very well attended. 22, the average is like 20 people at Turning Point. For the one in the communities, average is about 12 people, right? The one at Urban Ventures is about 8 or 9, 10, 11, you know, it varies. So wherever we go, the schools, I do have one for girls, Queen Fixture Crown is the name of that one, right? Queen Fixture Crown. That is very well received, yes. I get a lot of accolades from that one. Because it's targeting just girls and women, right? And so, yeah, so anybody can be referred, you could be self-referred to the anger managements, right? Tuesday evening is free. The one course for Urban Ventures it costs $250 to go through that one. The one for Turning Point, if you're just a part of Turning Point's participate, if you're a participant, you can come to that one. The schools, they just do it, whenever they need. Des, can you come and do it? Anger management sessions. For domestic violence, it can be self-referred. We do get a lot of people from out of the county. So we get people from Dakota County, Ramsey County, Hennepin County. That is referred to our domestic violence offender program, which is 36 weeks long. Anybody can come to that one. You can just make a referral. You can talk to the person that you want to come. Some do self-referral. Some I've had ministers refer to anger management and domestic violence. And domestic violence is pretty well attended. As you already know from the pandemic, domestic violence went through the roof. So there's no shortage of participants. Right now we have 8 women in the domestic violence survivor program. And if I count the woman that just called before I got on the line, that will make it number 9. Right? And so, yeah, so women can refer themselves, other partners refer to the domestic violence program as well, and anger management as well. Other participants refer they'll say, I told somebody about this program and I told them they needed it. A young man said he was sitting on the bus and he overheard a young man saying, I got to do anger management. My PO said I need to do anger management. I don't really want to go to anger management. I want no white man telling me what to do. Okay. Guys turned around to him and said, hey, I don't mean to interrupt. He said, but I know a place where you can go get anger management, and she's really good, and she doesn't play. Because I do say, I do stop playing. And so, he did. That young man actually did come to our program, and he said, I learned about your program on the bus. I was like, really? So, I mean, there is, I remember what I said at the top of the hour. I really, really am that person, and we really push this in our agency, removing barriers, right? Bureaucracy. To come get services? No, you just have a true desire to do it. And I have guys that now want therapy. Now, we know that anger management is probably closest some will ever get to therapy, right? But I tell them, this is a starting point. This is not the ending point. And you may need or benefit from therapy. Right now, I have 3 young men. I just got into therapists. They asked for it. They said, Ms. Galloway, I think it's time. I think I could use a therapist. See? But that's after trust and rapport has been built, right? So.
You said it's 2 things that stuck out. Like, I applaud you for doing something for the young ladies in the community. And I also think like some of the work that you've done is like a lot of the funding and grants is geared toward males, Black males, and which could be problematic when it comes to female programming. So do you plan on doing any programming geared toward, more
Yes,
more women in the community?
yes. We put on a retreat, and we had 28 women show. That was last December, not this December. That was last December. I've gotten calls like, when are we going to do that again, Mrs. Galloway? Okay. And then I just got a grant from Otter Bremer to do community chest. And what I wanted to do was to target girls in that program. As you may or may not know, girls are now passing the numbers of boys going into JDC, right? And so that's telling right there. Of course, here's the problem with kids that have been in the systems for a long time. I call them institutionalized, and these are teens. They're so used to people talking to them crazy when they come to a community-based program like mine, they have difficulties acclimating because we're not cussing at them. We're not making threats, right? We're gonna put you in a hole or whatever. Come on now, right? I've had a couple of those that came through, and it was kind of disconcerting. And this was this young lady's 3rd program, and Judge Bransford didn't want her to come. She said, I know Mrs. Galloway. Me and Mrs. Galloway go back because child protection. I know her. She said, I don't believe that this young lady's ready for a program like Mrs. Galloway's, even though it's a diversionary program. She said, we should send her where she's supposed to go, to prison. Now, keep in mind, she's 18. Sure enough, the girl lost it, became very physically threatening. Of course, that day, one day she did it with me while we were there, and then one day I wasn't there. And I could hear the tables being turned over. I said, where's security? They said, I'm not thinking about that toy cop. I can do prison time. Oh, yeah, okay. You can do prison time. Guess what? I talked to you one time already before with you and your mom and your probation officer. That's it. Do you know that young lady called back when she realized she was really going to go to prison? We need, I think I said this before, we're starting too late with some of these kids. This programming or programs need to start earlier, targeting at 6th grade and up. Let's be proactive versus reactive. That young lady was already she had been in 3 different programs, restricted programs, and she And one in the community even, where she lived in the residence. She couldn't make it. And I hate to lose, I can't save them all. And she was one I couldn't save. And she's now she's doing 5 years in adult prison. That's disturbing to me. That hurts me. But for the safety and the integrity of the program, I couldn't let her continue to act out like that, right? There's some things you have to just draw a line, but yeah. Girls need more programming. Yes, there's a greater need there. And that's why I'm choosing to use the Otto Bremer grant to target girls in the community. So that's the chess program.
Okay.
Yep. Let's see, I love the mission of your statement, okay. For what reason do you think adolescent substance use isn't included in more programs? Liability. So, and that also applies to CSC. I had a Hennepin County probation officer begging me to take CSC as well. We don't have the capacity, and I can't guarantee that this person is not going to abuse that person. No. So I stay within my own parameters, right? But back to the question of the substance abuse. I mean, there's a lot that goes into substance abuse, because I think in order to hold them accountable, you would have to do the UAs on site, provide intensive programming on site. And I do have a little bit of issues on outpatient. I'm not a proponent of outpatient treatment. I'm just not. I'm not a big proponent of outpatient because of the barrier. I mean, because of all the things that are coming at people that are newly trying to get into recovery. I have some really strong beliefs and feelings around substance treatment. I think that it should be done in-house. I think it should be done living on the premises for the first 40 days, 45 days, and then still have them coming to programming 3 days a week. That's a lot. That's a lot of money. They would have to give $1 million grant to do that, because you want to do programming where they're doing the in-house, then you want to do the where they're coming 3 days a week. You're doing the aftercare, you're doing the UAs, you know what I mean? You're making sure that they have sponsors. I'm still a sponsor. I've been out of chemical dependency like that almost 30 years. And I still have 2 sponsees that I sponsor, right? They're doing incredibly well. But I also know what it took to get them where they are. It's going to take $1 million grant to do it right for our young people. Our young people need it though. I hope and pray that Turning Point will get a grant like that and get a contract like that and start the youth program. I would be more than willing to work with them on that one. Right?
Well, I would say it costs more not to do it.
Oh, because, well, yeah, you already got that right, because understand, just like anger management, not only do the victim get hurt, but the person who's spewing the anger gets hurt. Secondary victims get hurt. It's the same that applies with chemical dependency. The person that's using, they're hurting people around them. They're not taking care of their business. They're not caring for their children, right? They're not cooking. They don't even have a house sometimes. They're going for house. They're taking their kids with them, flop house to flop house, right? Everybody gets burned when someone is using. And then heaven forbid, they have mental health issues too. Now you got a dual diagnosis that you are not addressing. So here's my biggest complaint. I'll put it on record. I think every treatment center should have dual diagnosis programming. Don't just treat the physical substance issue, deal with the emotional piece. That's dual diagnosis treatment. And our people and our kids need dual diagnosis programming. And it does cost money, but it will, as you said, Cedric, it will cost us more if we don't, because our kids are now using fentanyl in the marijuana. And they're using these other little different color pills that they thought was fentanyl that is not. And that's also it's on the increase. I'm scared for them. I really am. So. Any other questions? And isn't that a problem in itself? We got waiting periods even for mental health people. You know what I'm doing? I'm calling in favors. Like, that's a shame. I'm calling friends that I know that are doing therapy. I said, I need you to take this case for me. That's how I'm getting people in. I'm coming through the back door. I need you to take this case. The 2 men that I just talked about, that's how I got him in. Right? Period. Now, and within my program, the Grace Project, we have 4 mental health therapists. So that's not a problem for me within the house through the Grace Project. We don't have to fight to find them therapists because that's a part, I put that in there. But for the adult men and for the adult women, that's how I'm having to go through the back door to get them in. They're survivors. They have anger issues, survivors who have issues of depression, right? Because they stayed in that relationship too long. They need therapy. And most of them have been using to cope with with their violence that they encountered. So that's how I got a couple of the young ladies in, going through the back door. And I know that when I do this chess program with the girls, I'm already knowing I need to prepare myself. I'm going to have to probably find therapists for them as well, because I'll be able to see the need and explain to the partner that's bringing these 25 girls in, they need therapy. They should be in therapy.
Well, I think Cedric owes you a favor.
Oh, for sure. We already know this.
Sorry, Cedric.
Okay. Still call in some favors.
Got any extra favors for treatment beds?
Man.
Yeah, I have to think about that one. Because there's a lot of that going on right now, guys. It really is. Kids are going off on their parents. We got one young man who, when he goes to therapy, I said, I want you to address in your therapy sessions, he's in the Grace Project, about the relationship you have with your mother. I'm not doing that, Mrs. Galloway. I said, well, then you'll never graduate this program. And then that means you're going to prison. I said, because the issue I see is with your mom. Now he's starting to address.
I have to ask you a quick question because we're running out of time, but I want to get this one in.
Okay.
How does the direct approach work in the African American community? Because, I've learned, I'm a therapist, we learn multiple ways of having people come to a position and an understanding.
Yes.
But your style is more like that old Pentecostal, fiery brimstone, this is what it is type approach.
Well,
How does that work when you're working in the community?
Well,
how is that received? That direct, it's just right there. This is what it is. Deal with it.
yeah.
Why that approach? Why did you choose that approach over many other ways that you've learned to?
Well, I think largely because the 24 years that I was an investigator for child protection, I think I really learned well how to do that. We could do this the easy way, or we could do this the hard way. Which do you want to do? Right? So I kind of use that same process in my everyday work, right? And then for the youth, I got kids calling me grandma, auntie, T, Miss G, right? That's rapport. They're building a rapport with me, right? I got boys that will come up and hug me. Hi, Mrs. Galloway, how are you? Right? That says something. They know, first of all, the trust is there now, right? And I'm very clear. I'm very upfront. Either it's the easy way or the hard way. It's your choice. That's why the one program's called Choice. The choice is yours. Simple. And I do believe the mothering, nurturing piece comes out, right? We have kids that come to the work program. They didn't have shoes, tennis shoes. They have to have black tennis shoes, black dress pants, and a white t-shirt. I thought I was just doing it for the Grace Project, but it was so many other kids that was in need of that. And I'm like, does your parent not know what the requirement was? But it's just like, okay, you know what? Here you go. I've just come to the conclusion, if it does, you know what? Meet them where they are. You know what I mean? And that's what I do. I really do. And they're thankful and they're grateful, right? And I just, a lot of people tell me, they said, you know, I don't know how you do to get the respect out of the kids that you get. I do. For the most part, I think I would say 80% of our kids, I don't have any issues out of. And we work with a lot of kids. And it's just, once they get to know you and you're very upfront with them and you're very showing that we care about you. As Hennepin County, the person that's over my contract, which is a half a mil, he said, Mrs. Galloway, he said, you're giving them a lot of chances. I said, you know why I do that? Because I want to demonstrate to them that they're worth saving. That we're not giving up on the very first time they mess up, right? He said, because other agencies, they just cut them off. You're done, you're done. That's not us, we don't do that. So I think that plays a part in it, Cedric, as well, right? So. Can't hear you.
Thank you so much for coming in and educating us and sharing Wellspring Second Chance. If you could share your information, your website, or how we can support Wellspring, we'll add it to our echo. Okay. And thank everybody for coming. We really appreciate you showing up for these echoes. Your participation is very important. So I'm passing the ball to Katie.
Poor Cedric, I hope you feel better. Thank you so much, Mrs. Galloway. I learned so much from you. The recording for this will be posted on the website within the next 2 weeks. And we hope to see everybody next month.
Okay. And so for the information is wellspringmn.org. And my phone number is 612-296-2895.
You're giving your phone number, 612.
I should have learned by now not to do that. Calling me from Washington, D.C. right now. I in Washington when I was at the conference recently for the gun violence and but 612-296-2895. That's funny.
There you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. Okay. And thank you all for the opportunity to present. All right, Cedric, we'll talk soon, sir.
Okay.
All right.
I'll do that.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.